Um, I managed to score the big oil tank I'm going to need for my little brother's maple sap evaporator. So let me show you what I got going on here real quick. All right, here's what I got. Found myself a 250-gallon oil storage tank for like oil furnaces or whatever. This is what I'm going to be cutting up to make the actual firebox for his maple sap evaporator. So I'm gonna get this unloaded and put away, and you guys will see this. Well, you'll see this portion of the video later, but it's going to be at least a month or two before I get to building it. So, hey everybody, welcome to another series on Pyro's projects. Today I'm actually going to be getting started on the maple sap evaporator for my buddy. I'll flip the camera around real quick. I'll show you what I'm working with, and then I'm going to start drawing some stuff out, doing some measuring, and I'll show you what the ultimate goal is. So hold on one second. All right, so here's the tank I'm working with. I believe it's a 250 or 275 gallon fuel oil tank. It used to be like in a basement or something of that nature. I'm not sure. But what I'm going to be doing is I got to take some measurements, go around it, you know, the oval around, and then the overall height and, well, I guess width of the tank this way and height of the tank that way. Or maybe this is the length going up, whatever. I got to take a bunch of measurements, and then I'm going to start drawing the lines on where I'm going to start cutting things to actually turn this into a sap evaporator. So let me get some measurements and some markings, and I'll draw a couple of lines on here, and I'll show you what the ultimate goal is, and then start cutting it up, I reckon. And I just wanted to let you know that I did do some research on how these arches are built and watched a handful of videos off of YouTube and looked at other manufacturers. And I'm using some ideas from all of them to build this one. So, yeah, hopefully it turns out good enough to do what I want it to do. And we'll see what happens. Okay, so here's where I'm at. I've got everything marked off where I'm going to cut and what's going away. The extra piece right here is going away. The actual evaporator pan is going to sit there. This piece up here, I will put the adapter for the chimney stack, which I'll have to cut this feller out. And then this whole section from here all the way down to that line will go away. This bottom piece right here will be the burn box, and you can see the 45-degree cut. So as the fire is burning away, it actually allows that heat, smoke, and flame to travel out, heating up the entire bottom of the evaporator pan. So, and then I left this piece right here. I'm actually going to cut it this way. This is so I can attach the rear legs and give it something sturdy that will still be part of the body of the arch. So now that I've got it all mapped out, I've got the other side drawn exactly the same. It took a while to measure it and make sure everything was even, square, and where it needed to be. But now I'm going to go ahead and start cutting this up and get it chunked apart. Once I get the first, I'm going to start with this piece down here, which will be the open part of the archway. Once I get that cut out, I'll update you and show you what it looks like there. And I'll actually have to go ahead and frame this bottom piece down to the 45 and probably go ahead and plate it in before I cut this, because I'm going to have to flip the whole barrel over. And I don't want to mess with, you know, obviously with it being this middle piece, it'll get real flimsy. So I want to strengthen what I'm going to cut out before I flip it and cut the other section off. So I'm going to go ahead and get this first piece cut out, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a little bit. All right, here's the first piece cut out. And I've got that sitting just right here. What I'm going to do is go around from the inside and cut this curved end off. That end is going to be placed right back into here to cap the back of the firebox. And then I'll start cutting the pieces out that I need. I actually have one of those collapsible bed frames sitting over there against the wall. I'm going to use that to stiffen up these edges, and I'll start cutting and putting the panels in to box this part in. And then we'll go from there. Once I get all that cut up, or I'll probably box it in first, and then I'll put the panels in from the inside so I can weld them nice and tight to kind of seal the box together. But that's where I'm at right now. And once I get it all framed in with that bed frame stuff on these edges so that it'll stiffen up the side, I'll flip the whole thing over and start cutting the top out where the evaporator pan goes. And that way, once I have that side opened up, I can weld in the plates from the inside to get this all sealed up nice and tight like. But I think what I'm going to do is, for right now, is I'm going to go ahead and stop and do a lunch break, and we'll get back to it in a little while. All right, so another update. I got the end cap cut out of the piece I already cut off, and I got it put in here and welded all the way around. And then I got the first piece of the framework for the opening cut and welded it in. Just did a couple of tack welds here on the outside. Now I got to do the 45 piece down here and start on the other side of this thing to get those installed. Then I'm going to work on putting the legs up here so that I can actually stand this thing up to sit the way it's supposed to sit, and get the top piece cut out and start working on that. So I'll get to going on getting this all framed in so that it's more solid. And I'll do once I get the legs cut and whatnot and put in, I'll show you that. All right, everybody, another little update here. Okay. I went ahead and cut a hole in the back plate of the firebox, because what I plan on doing is adding a tube that runs down, well, it would be across the bottom, and I'm going to set it all up for a forced air draft setup. My buddy's probably not going to use the forced air draft right away, but I'm going to have it set up and ready for him in case he does do it. I got both sides of the angle brackets put in, and I went ahead and threw a cross stretcher in to help stiffen it up while I do the rest of the work. I still got to put my legs on, which I measured. I used another piece of steel and clamped it to the little ears down there, coming straight up, and measured to the end here to get a length to match the pads. That way I can add the legs out here and have them even with the pads on the bottom. And that way I can get some sort of foot set up so that the thing will sit level. So that's where we're at right now. It's getting late enough in the day and it's hot enough in this barn. I think I'm going to go ahead and pull the plug. All right, so here's where we're at with building the legs. What I did is took the barrel and stood it up on its top side and wedged a couple of pieces of just scrap. And I used my level along the one edge here to make sure my barrel was standing straight up and down for the sides. And then set the first foot across the top so that I can then get that leveled. Now, the problem I ran into is, I know the welds look a little right now, but I'm going to get that fixed and boxed in, and you'll see why. This side sat right on the foot that was already part of the barrel. To get the foot or this leg level, I ended up having to space it up a 1/2 inch. So I stuffed a piece of that 1/2 inch by 1 inch square tube in there and got that welded together so that it's nice and solid and it's level. It's square to the side so that when I flip it over and put the base to the ground, the top side will be level for the pan. So I'm going to have to come in and clean up both sides, and I'm probably going to plate this in to kind of make it look nicer than what it does right now, because it does look a little rough. but I had to do what I had to do to make it square, and so that the stove will stand up square and level, so that when we put the evaporator pan on, you don't have your liquid running to one side or the other, so that we get a nice even boil. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and work on getting the leg extension or the cross pieces going across to this other end over here, so that it'll have, and the way I'm actually going to do this is I'm going to set the legs here so that you can get pallet forks underneath it to pick the whole thing up and move it easier. So I'll get started on the other side, and once I get it all squared up and level, I'll come back and get you another update. Okay, so here's the basic idea. Obviously, we already discussed that far leg down here. Then I'm going to build these legs up here, and then this tube, I'll cut it off flush back here. But this tube will run straight across, and that gives a 2-inch gap between here and what it's going to sit on. So you can be able to slide some forks right in there to pick it up and move it around. And then since this leg is so much narrower and I don't know what surface this is going to sit on, once I get this cut the length, I'll actually turn these and go this way across, so it'll have a nice 3-inch wide foot to sit on, just like that end. But that's what it's going to look like when it's done. I'll get to marking everything off and getting it all cut and ready to weld together. And once I have it all welded together, I'll catch you up again and show you the finished product. And then I'll get it flipped over so that I can start cutting what's going to be the top side out to put the evaporator pan in. So we get this all put together, and we'll show you what it looks like once I get it flipped over. Okay, here's what I came up with. I've got my bars all welded into place, my upright legs for the open end of the arch. And then what I ended up doing to kind of match the wide footprint of this end, I took a piece of that 1-inch square stock, stood it on end, and put another piece of the same as this stuff here, the crossbar, going this way to widen this foot out. Otherwise, it would only have been 1 inch touching the ground, whereas now it's got 4. That end is 3 inches. I think that should be plenty of wide of a footprint to keep it from sinking one end or the other. I'm guessing once this is put into place well, we're going to have to build a sugar shack for it. But I'm thinking we're probably going to put down some of those, what do you call them? Those little brick pavers that you put in like the yard or something to set it on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and eat some lunch. And then when I come back out, I'm going to get this flipped over and show you what it looks like sitting on its feet. And should be able to get started on cutting out the top for the pan. So we'll see you in a little bit. All right, so this is what it looks like sitting on its feet the correct way. I did have to redo some of my lines along the side here, because once I got it flipped over and made sure my bottom was level, these lines for the evaporator pan were not level. So I had to go through and redo them so that everything is level. So when we put the pan on, it boils evenly across the bottom. So this is where we're at. I think I'm going to go ahead and pull the plug for today, because I got to get ready for the work week. And maybe next weekend I'll get into cutting this top piece off and start getting it all framed in for the pan to sit on it. And we're going to have to work on also insulating the firebox and up through to where the smokestack is going to be, which I did go ahead and draw my 6-inch circle here, because we're going to put a 6-inch stack off the top. So this is where we're going to be for now. And next weekend I'll get it top cut off, and we'll start working on plating the inside and getting everything set for insulation. Oh, and I'll have to put this end cap down there for the upright for the flue. So we'll get all that done next weekend. So thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.